This is the advisory team on January 12th, 2022 in the Community Development Building. It is 6:10. Okay guys, so it is January and we are at the end kind of one more topic, housing. Let me just give you a little schedule about the housing stuff, and at the end we can talk a little bit about February and going on. This is going to be our last meeting for just a little bit in person, so it's kind of a drag, this whole COVID stuff, but the council voted on Monday to make all city meetings after January 24th virtual. Hopefully that won't be for too long, but like Alexis said, we don't know. So, so our February meeting would be virtual. On January 24th, that is a week from Monday, if the group here decides that they are ready to put forward some housing recommendations, somebody would be named probably a spokesperson, like last time it was Michael, somebody who would come to the council. Obviously the team, oh, and it is virtual, so you could do this from home, would kind of go through some of the recommendations for the council. And at that time the council can accept the recommendations, and then that's something that they have sort of, and then they will have to make priorities on what happens first. And January 28th and 29th, every single year, the last weekend in January, the council meets on a Friday and a Saturday for a 2-week workshop. And a lot of you might remember you came virtually last year. There's not often guests like that, but last year the advisory team did attend and talked to the council. This time the council is really using their time. They've kind of slated out a portion of time to talk about housing and what the priorities would be based on your recommendations, based on the housing plan. I have a copy here to hand out at the end, based on the, you know, when Ali Nimi had those series of community meetings. So, you know, at the end of the month, the council's going to have a lot of information on housing, and then they're going to decide sort of what happens first in their minds and that kind of thing. So, timing-wise, it would be great if the advisory team can put forward some recommendations before they meet at that weekend workshop. So I just wanted to kind of lay out the timing. After that, and we'll talk about February and for the, you know, our February meeting, and we'll see, I don't know if we'd have time today, but February for sure, looking at what the team does going forward. How does the team visualize your work? Does it stay here? Do you meet for the rest of the year? There's all kinds of options, but we can talk about that. But right now, the main goal for tonight is to kind of go through the housing recommendations and, you know, make changes, move things around, see if the group comes to consensus or not on what you want to put forward to the, you know, to the council. And in front of you, I sort of printed out, felt a little guilty printing all the paper, but this was just so everybody could kind of see the different things that this group has gone through. From the bottom up, it's September's meeting, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that the HRA talked about and Allie talked about with homelessness. The group took a break in October and talked about the racial equity plan. You came back in November, and we were here, and we had those big sheets on the walls. And everybody sort of shared their experiences about different topics about housing. And there's a shortened summary from all of your thoughts in your packet. And then December, people came together, and what was kind of interesting is the people who came in November and the people who came in December, except for 2 people, they were different groups. You know, usually we have our whole team, but just for different reasons, we kind of had half of the team and half of the team. So then they met in December, the other group, and heard from Leah Hall at Three Rivers Community Action, and then made some comments and changes and questions. And I took all of that information and created kind of another draft here based on everything that people had said, and we can go through it, and people can make comments. So do you have questions right at the outset, or would you be ready to start going through the different recommendations? And do you want to just start at the top, or does anyone have any questions on sort of what's happened so far? Nope, we're good? Okay. So the first one was to create more affordable and supportive housing units, and the group just talked a lot about, and they're up here too. We can kind of work it through, and then we'll make changes over there. The first one says to commit to working with a developer to build at least one permanent supportive housing project. This group talked, a lot about A, B, C, and D, the drug and alcohol addiction, criminal background, mental health and behavioral health, and physical disability support. So some housing. The group could decide, right here it says 4 units or more. No one really named a number, so we can take that number off. You can decide if you want to be that specific. But this was one of the recommendations that this team talked about. Does anyone have any comments or questions about that one?
I guess I would say I think 4 units isn't going to even begin to touch the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
And for a builder, they're probably not going to want to build that at 4 units because it's not going to be cost effective for them.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
to, up that to at 4 units you got a pretty high rent to make it work.
Yep.
And then just the extreme need, the criminal background itself, disqualifies so many people because I would say criminal and because the eviction would be considered criminal, but like the eviction, like the civil part of it too, would be the evictions.
So we should probably add that.
Right.
We don't have that. People who have, so what would we say, Liz? That's civil or just eviction?
I would say that are challenging backgrounds.
Specific to eviction? Do you want to?
Challenging backgrounds for obtaining rent, a rental. That would be more broad with all the different reasons that somebody can't find housing.
Okay.
And especially if you're looking at other agencies, like this is a strong collaborative in the community when you're bringing in mental health and that, you're going to want those other supporting agencies to have more than 4 people that they would be supporting.
So what would this group like to recommend to the council? Or you don't have to name any. It's up to. It's getting a little bit detailed, but I think, you make a good point. So what would your
My argument is no less than 12. But
does this group have thoughts on that?
I'd like, who was the gal who was here talking, not the last meeting, but the meeting before on the housing? Who built the one in Rochester and that?
Leah Hall?
Yeah.
Michael, you missed that one, I think.
Oh, the November one?
Mm-hmm. December was the last one.
I'd kind of like her opinion on this, and she's gone through this. Putting a number on it. I like the idea of having to put a number on it, because otherwise it's too big, but then putting a number on it. On the other hand, it defines and sets a parameter with the city saying, okay, they're recommending, 2, 4, 8, 12, whatever it is. How can that be funded? Because obviously the higher the number, the much more funding is needed. So it's kind of a catch-22 in that, but I'd like to, just get her opinion on something like that. Because I remember how big of that unit that they put in there. That was pretty substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that as much as I was reading it, but I was thinking it was minimum, maybe of 4. What mostly will go around is if you get a little lot and you're going with the city to say, you know, we want to put a 12 unit. If the lot is slightly smaller, that might not go very well, then that brings in a lot of zoning issues. I'm thinking, but if you can put 8, you know, so I'm thinking maybe 12 should be maybe minimum.
Well, to put a little, I mean, so far at Open Harbor, we've had like 23 different people through, and every one of them would qualify as having a challenging rental record. So right there, we can put 23 people in. Now it's done.
Right. And does the group want to talk a little bit about, you know, because B talks about affordable housing units, which is different than supportive, you know, supportive. And Liz, maybe, or for anyone, does this group, how do you define exactly supportive? Because some supportive housing is simply, you know, some is a house with an actual social worker type of person who's a caseworker who's right there, right, and provides all of that. And sometimes, right, it's like an individual 3 units here in this house for sober living and 3 units here. So if this group wants to define that more.
I think a lot of the trend, when you look at like the small, you know, the Envision and those type of things, and the communities that are building the independent small units in like the, you know, the housing first type models, they're looking at, like, they're staying in these units like a year, no more than 2 years. It's not a permanent thing. So true supportive housing is just a bridge. It's not long-term sustainable, but then they move into affordable housing or whatever, you know. Okay. But so this wouldn't be a permanent solution if you're calling it supportive, really.
So we should take off that.
Maybe like a 2-year maximum that somebody would live there. But within that 2 years, they're getting that support to then move on. And I know the county's looking at other programs too, like a rent mitigation program and that type of thing that would work hand in hand with a property like this, then to get people into that.
So Liz, you're saying it could be a larger unit, but it could be larger, but it could also be smaller units, transition, kind of supportive transitional housing.
Right. A lot of the trend is finding a piece of land and putting the very small, like 10 by 10 units where there's like a community kitchen, community bathrooms, community laundry, that type of thing, because then they still have that feeling of community, but they have their own space for the safety and their own personal space. And that's a really cost-effective way to do it. I've just got a lot of information on those type of properties that are popping up all over the place. Some can do, I mean, a lot of churches are starting to do them because they don't have to have the permission from the city to do them. And they're putting 8-10 units on their, you know, in their parking lot. Okay. And so it's a really cost-effective way to do it because you're just building these small units or having them brought in. And then, like I say, the support comes from having the central building that has all the other things in them. But the feeling of independence comes from they have their actual own place.
Okay. And on the 24th, too, Leah Hall, who came last month, she is also presenting at the next council meeting a presentation, kind of like what she gave to this group, but a little more specific to what the council, and so she's going to give examples of Lake City and some of the other units
that she's the one in Lake City, right?
Yep. And so she came and talked to this group about some of the affordable and supportive housing units that Three Rivers has done and wants to share with the council because Three Rivers would like to come to Red Wing and do more. So the council will be hearing more. So whether or not, I don't know how specific this group needs to be because I think that'll happen based on what the developer wants. You know what I mean?
I mean, we could. One in Lake City is more affordable than supportive, right? Because isn't it modeled after Eagle Ridge?
Yeah, I thought though that there were. I'm
The
forgetting
plans
now. I
I've
thought
seen,
there
it
was
looks
a
like.
couple.
being
Okay. Okay. So does anyone over here on this side of the room have any thoughts on this recommendation for supportive housing? Sam, I know you've talked about it before with wanting a place for people to recover and that kind of thing. Or no?
Yeah, no, definitely. I know we talked about last time,
Mm-hmm.
but there was specific zoning. A little bit, not some of it.
But it can be put somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah. Yeah, I think there are some limitations, but there are also some possibilities. So it sounds like we would take off permanent because the supportive could be just a place where people are kind of recovering and they're
Right.
getting supportive help, but they wouldn't always live there.
Right.
Then they would move on to something else. Okay. And the one thing that we're kind of looking at is what number of units. I don't know if you feel like we could come to some kind of consensus and keep moving and then come back to this if we want to. Michael?
With these projects that y'all were talking about in Rochester and Lake City, how many units are in those ones?
I just found it on my one sheet from September.
Yeah.
September?
And I was thinking about, that one was 255 units.
Oh, shit.
Isn't Lake
One
City
across
like
from the middle was
44?
apartments. What was that?
Isn't Lake City like 44?
I didn't see that one in here. But yeah, that was brand new across from the Mayo, $46 million.
Was that supportive, Steve, with an actual case manager and things like that, or was that just affordable?
Lake City's gonna be kind of like Jordan Towers. They're gonna have social workers on site. I would not consider, I don't think, Jordan Towers is not supportive. You know, they have social workers and that, but they're not doing these things.
Right. Intense.
40% of those were affordable workforce housing.
Right. Which is different than like
Support.
Supportive.
super intense support.
So when I think of supportive, I'm thinking of, I can't help. I'm thinking of programs like they have in Ramsey County. I specifically know somebody who does this. So more like maybe people who are getting away from drugs and in treatment and stuff like that, but they've been mandated right at this moment to find a minimum of 6 units so that these people don't, people who are being treated don't live in one house, so they can be taught to be independent, so that, you know, it's 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and maybe a studio with a kitchen. That's the new thing which is going in St. Paul, so that then technically you're not worried about where are we taking these people when we move them from this place to another. And they are not supported as you're supposed to feed them, but they work with reminders, you know. They're being monitored. What are you doing? Did you go out? Did you get back? Or, you know, did you take your meds? Do you need a doctor's appointment? Did you clean your room today? So they will have probably one staff at that place. And that's what I think of when you say supportive. They're more independent, but with a little bit of direction. That's the program. And I call it, say, what's the program going? Because they're buying all these old places in St. Paul, and they're changing them into these units. Commercial is being sold. And Minneapolis also started that, so that we can take people from, we can be able to house people with mental health and behavior, and just people who need support. But I don't know. Again, I read through this, I wasn't around, but I'm just, when I think supportive, I'm thinking maybe we're talking about that kind of support.
And it can, the definition can
Yeah,
change based on what you're talking about, and the type can also change. So, you know, I don't necessarily think that we today have to come up with exactly the kind necessarily, unless you do, and then if this group feels strongly that you do want to sort of say a very specific type, we can dig into that. Or if this group basically wants the council to know, this is super important that we don't have. We think some more needs to dig into it, and maybe a couple people or 3 people on this group, I don't know, maybe there's a little task force that gets put together with the council that tries to figure out what that should be, or with the
maybe
developer.
let's figure out which one we need more, you know, which one we need first.
Was
Maybe
there-
everything is needed, but which one do we need right now?
Was there a specific reason that D became physical disability?
Well, we were talking, and Rachel brought this up, I think, in one of our meetings, just because for people with physical disability. Rachel, why don't you, I don't want to talk, why don't you just say why you felt like that was...
Yeah, I know that I work with people with disabilities, and part of that challenge is finding housing. And it's really, really hard to find not only an affordable place, because most people who are on, or who have physical and cognitive disabilities are on fixed incomes. So it's not only hard to find, you know, affordable, but also accessible housing, because these, you know, 8 to 12 unit buildings need to be built to specific
Can we
requirements.
just make it like a documented disability though, versus
It doesn't have to
limited
say
to
physical.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Were you talking kind of specific to physical disabilities?
It just says
I just
physical
meant for both,
disability,
like,
where if we just had like a disability itself.
Yes, okay. And it wouldn't have to be physical. Do you want to take that out entirely? Or physical?
As long as it says it, like, maybe accessible, because
Oh, right.
just because
People
people
with
with,
like ramps or.
Exactly, like people with
Yeah,
physical
because there's a lot of
disabilities
kids that don't have that.
right.
Right, I just would hate to like, you know, to have like a mental health disability just because I have a physical disability.
Right, it's still a disability.
When I look at the people who I'm working with, you know, in both my jobs, they don't have the physical, but like one right now, I mean, she's deaf, you know. So, I mean, that would be a documented disability, and she would definitely need this program because of her past rental record, you know. So yes, it's not physical in the way of accessible to wheelchair, but it is a disability that, you know.
And they would need like specialized, you know, fire alarms and stuff for people that are deaf, so that goes into the special requirements as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question, just because I want to make sure I'm reading it right. When we first talked about how it says 4 units or more, I'm reading it wrong, please tell me, but is this like a building with 4 units in it, or are we talking like 4 separate locations with like different, like 4 separate locations with a different purpose? Is that why there's A, B, C, and D? Like,
Yeah. I think what this was meant to do, at least, was to show these 4, A, B, C, and D, are things that this group has talked about and said this is important. You know, there's one thing to do affordable housing and B, but there needs to be also supportive housing for people to help people in transition with these 4 things. And Sam, to your question about the 4 units or more, this was saying there should be at least 1 project, probably a unit with 4 units. But again, that was just, we could just say at least 1 supportive housing project or at least 2. I think the idea is to say we need something. We really only have...
Are we talking about building them from the ground up or utilizing ones that
Could
are
be
already
either.
here? Huh?
Could be either, and I think that depends on the
Because if you're
developer.
building it from the ground up, we also got to look at the fact of like the whole plumbing issues and all that stuff. Because that was something I was talking to a buddy of mine who's an engineer, and he was like, you know, that whole tiny home thing all sounds all cool and good, but at the end of the day, where's the water and the, you know, when people go to the bathroom or in the wastewater, where's all that going? You know, that's what I'm thinking. So, 'cause that's probably going to cost a couple of dollars as well too.
Yeah, and I think this is going to have to be discussed more. This is sort of like the basis, you know, the basic, what does that supportive housing mean then? this group and others would come together with city council and say, okay, what does that look like?
So I guess I was asking because if you look at the A, B, C, and D, if we were only going to put, just because it says at least one permanent support housing, and then we've got all these lists of needs that we discussed, I think that it would be hard to put
Oh, yeah.
all these people with these specific needs into one unit, even if it's, or one space.
Oh, for
with
sure.
4 units, sometimes it's not really, I don't know the word for it, but it wouldn't be a good idea to place somebody with one disability or mental health or,
Yep.
somebody
Yeah, we should
recovering
probably-
from drug addiction, all in one space.
Yeah.
I feel like it would just make it really hard to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah, we should probably just take that 4 units or out, because I think this was meant to be a little more like, hey, we need supportive housing. These are 4 areas that the group has talked about as really important. That might mean 1 unit. It could be, I don't know, I'm just making things up, 10 units just for people who have challenging backgrounds or, who had criminal backgrounds or
So that's
something.
maybe where I was
So we should make this
because
more-
this specifically says 1 with 4 units or more.
Yeah, that's confusing and that shouldn't. Yep, agreed.
I think if there are going to be anything purchased or built, that they need to be specific to one group of people. So I don't think we should limit it to only 1, because these are obviously all very important, but I don't think they should all be placed together either.
I will say that most people that I help with housing have at least 3 of these as a challenge.
Right, no, I understand that,
So
but
they would
But
be,
there are people who don't have more than one that are struggling with only one thing, who might not be comfortable moving in with a certain group of people who aren't struggling in the way they're struggling. It's more easy to accept help and seek for help, I think, when you know that you're going somewhere where people are in the same boat you are. If that makes sense.
It's kind of like an alcoholic can't tell a crackhead how to recover. They can't tell an alcoholic how to.
Kind of.
I get what you're saying.
Overall dependence or support would be, I would say, one category to me, but I know there's a difference between NA and AA. Because there's
yeah.
just,
I guess what I was trying to say is, when I look at the people who I'm trying to help with, their criminal background shows that they have drug charges. So then that makes, both of those, they've got a drug charge and a challenging criminal background.
right.
And then most of that has to do with they have mental health issues. So it's hard to separate out two. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of the people that I work at either job, their mental health has led them to the other issues, the criminal background and the drug or alcohol addiction.
Right. No, I get that.
Because a lot of people's drug and alcohol are to a degree where it's classified as a mental health issue, so.
Oh, no,
It
no,
really
yeah, I completely
overlaps,
understand
too.
that. I just think that lumping them all together into one area wouldn't, it could possibly be inequitable for a certain person that's not facing those 3 or 4 all in one. Because then they're the less of a priority. Oh, you only have one of these. We're going to go to somebody who has 3 of these, documented or not, because they're probably in more need than you are. But that's not necessary. You know what I mean? If there's like an application process to getting into a home like this, you shouldn't narrow it down to whether you have 1 or 4 of these that are listed.
No, I mean, I don't think that would.
So I think it would be easier to have them separated, because then you're not fighting the next person who is deemed in more need than you are, just because they qualify more of those than just one.
And I guess the supportive housing units that I've been studying, they don't qualify that way. It's just simply an application, you know, like, you have to have at least one of these to live here. There's not, you don't, it's not the prioritized, not the ones that I'm sure there maybe are some, but not the ones that I've been studying around the state. They don't give priorities if you have 3 or 4.
That's good to hear. I don't know that in Redmond there's a lot of waiting lists for things.
Yeah,
Anything.
time.
So
Yeah.
if you could narrow down something, it would be easier. But
Yeah, I think Jordan Tower is like 2 years.
So would the groups want to say something like commit to working with one or more developers to build transitional supportive housing with, you know, and just, you know, with priorities in these 4 areas.
yeah.
And that way, it doesn't say permanent supportive, it's more transitional supportive. And then depending on if whatever developer comes around, or, you know, Three Rivers has a very specific thing that they want to do, that way it's not so dictating something, but it shows what you want prioritized. Is that okay with people? So we would say commit to working with one or more developers to build transitional supportive housing projects. And then it would list those. Okay.
Are we going to have any suggestions for funding? Because the vouchers, you know, I think Section 8 is closed again. And the voucher program is so
Well, I know
difficult.
Leah was going to come from Three Rivers and talk about different projects that she's worked on and different examples. I'm not saying that that would happen for sure with Three Rivers, but she will kind of open up some different options. And
Okay.
but I don't know, do you have a suggestion, Liz, for like specific funding things? Is that what you're saying, or are you just
Well,
asking?
I just know that the vouchers are so, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
people are waiting over 2 years to get a voucher.
Yeah.
And so, I think to try and find, you know, like the grants and that type of thing, and then that goes back to what we were talking about Ally's last time, is who rates those.
Were you here in December, Liz? You were, weren't you?
Right?
Were you here in December?
No, my
Okay.
niece.
Oh, that's right. Because Liz, Leah was talking about there are ways to help fund that if it's a specific project.
Okay.
I don't know what all of that is, but it was different than the voucher program that has the waiting list. And we can connect more with her to find out, but okay. Okay. Let's move on and see if we need to come back to that one, but it seems like at least that is up there for the council to know that that should be prioritized. And the second one, again, commit to working with partners to create affordable housing. This one said at least 8, but again, this might not be the right direction to go with that much detail. Units could either be new construction or upgraded current houses and apartments, because this group talked a little bit about doing new, but then we've also got a lot of older homes, and those could be revamped. How does the group feel about that, the detail or the lack of detail? 8 is not a lot, but Michael?
I'm just curious on the definition of community partners versus community members. What's the difference?
Yeah, where was that?
The number 2 is highlighted in the yellow.
Oh,
at the
number
very
2.
top. Are we on the number 2 or
We're
no?
just on, we're only on 1B.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
We're still on, yeah.
Our number 2, I'm sorry.
There are a lot of them.
What's the question on that?
Question is just how do you feel about that? Does everybody agree? Everybody was agreeing throughout our discussions about affordable housing. You can either be very, a little more vague and just say, and when that says partners, commit to working with partners, that could be partners like Habitat for Humanity, the housing, the HRA. That could be through Rivers. It could be someone else entirely. So partners, it could be with philanthropic partners, possibly. It could be with a developer.
All I know, if I should add on this is, I just feel like as we approach the council, we should let them know that I think they need to take ownership of this problem. That's the first thing they have to do. They have to see that this is the issue which is happening in this city, and the problem starts from there because they are our leaders, right? So in that, once they take that ownership, they'll be able to initiate and assist in one, locating properties, locating land, for example. Because when I look around in Red Wing, I'm sure there would have been 2-3 buildings coming up already. Does anybody know where there's land which can be used for this? So maybe the city, if they took that ownership, they know whose land owns, which land should be converted from the zoning, from industrial. I think we have enough industries so far, and we are lacking people to work in the industries. So we can change, if there's zoning issues on land, that should be changed from industry, industrial, to dwelling, so that we can build, if we have to catch up with the 2040. That's what I'm saying. So that's the first step, which I think we should ask the council to do. And also, they should also look at these incentives. We are asking the donors or the partners who are going to come in right now to purchase that piece of land, if you're going to buy it, and be able to put a piece of timber and then go affordable housing is going to be very tough. So what I'm suggesting is the city, after they take ownership of that problem, they'll be able to find incentives, not the federal incentives. There are those which comes with the tax breaks and stuff like that, but they can come with other incentives to help the developers. Or if the developers are community members, it doesn't matter, but something to keep this moving. These issues of zoning, okay, no, you cannot go 2 feet higher than this, those also should be looked into. Because those are the things which will just take 1 year of people trying to get a permit to build. We are talking 2023, and we need 8 buildings of this. The city has to step it up. They have to come up front to say, yeah, this is an issue we're having, we want to do this. But they have to let go of a few of these little, they're big things, but I'm just thinking that will help. They gotta find land if they have and donate it to those builders, developers who are willing to do that. They have buildings which are not being used for the intended purposes, and it's just vacant. We can turn those into these condos we're talking about and the units we're talking about. What I'm asking for is initiative from the city. We are just suggesting, I think that's what we're trying to do as a team, is suggest all these things to them, but they should take it up. It's not the advisory's baby. We are working for the council so that it's easier to pass it through. So the way we are taking it, I think everybody's serious about it in here. If the city can say, yeah, we need this, or is it the city or is it the council, or am I talking? But you know what I'm saying? Just hold it by the horns. Yeah, we take this seriously, we need it done, and 2023 is next year. It is next year. We don't have a piece of land to start building in January on the 12th. We are not making these targets. But if they put their heads together to say, what do we have, which is a vacant lot, which house can we take down? They can use that revitalization program where if there's a dilapidated home and maybe the owner would rather take that money and build somewhere else because they've been there, take that house down and put in a 4-unit or 8-unit or 12-unit, whatever fits. I just wanted to add those. I just wanted to speak directly to the council on that piece.
Okay,
Thank
that's good. Yep, no, that's great. And letter F kind of refers a little bit to that, research and add new local incentives. And like you said, but we can add a little bit more to that, Cholaway, with, the council taking initiative to really push what they could do locally. On B, I think maybe it is not great to put an exact number. it says 8 affordable housing units. Well, some people might think that that's an actual like 8 facilities versus 8 units, 8 families. It's up to you all what you think.
Do we have an idea of how many affordable housing units there are in Red Wing? How many are deemed? Could we give it a percentage?
We do, and we've got, well, this plan just came out from the community meetings, and we can look at that at the end, but I wanted the team to really put its own things forward.
Well, like whatever that number
but
is.
The study has it in there.
Increase it by a certain percent.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Or, I don't know if you guys think it's a good idea.
Or we can say 8 minimum, multiple units, multiple dwellings, so that they are not 1, 2, 3 houses. There could be buildings of 10, but 8 of them or something like that. So maybe we add the minimum and the multiple unit buildings. Because when we're talking 8, I'm not thinking we mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 homes, single residence, are we? We're talking about buildings with units inside.
I think that if there were 8 new facilities, that's a lot.
Yeah, I was thinking this was like 8 families can move into affordable housing units.
Yeah.
That's how I took that. Or 8 single people, whatever, but 8 new homes would be created, whether it's in one apartment that has 4 and 2 duplexes or whatever, but 8 total would be considered rentable.
Well, maybe it is a good idea to go by percentage, because
Because 8 would be too liberal, I think, for 4 years.
I don't know how many we have.
we can look that up. I mean, that is in the study, and I should get that. I can look that up by the end of this meeting. And
because when we're supposed to be at 5%, we're only at like 1.25% or something, right? Of
vacancy.
rentals. So if we could tie it to closing that gap somehow, by making maybe we're up to 2% or 1.5%. If each year we could grow 0.25%, eventually we'll get there.
what does the group think about that?
I think that's a good idea. I think if we put a specific number on it, we limit it. 5%.
And if we put a growth per year or a growth every 2 years, each year we're increasing more because then our percentage is bigger and your growth then becomes bigger each year too. So if you say grow by 0.25% each year or something like that, then then it goes maybe from 15 units to 18 units next year that you're growing by every 2 years.
Okay.
Because both of these are going to have a lot of NIMBY in them.
Yep. Yeah, that not in my backyard type of thing. Okay. Okay, good.
Doesn't the HRA own property in town from our meeting a few months ago? Numbers in that, if that's what you're talking about?
Well, there's more than HRA, because Three Rivers has them. That's Jordan Towers, and then the other units that HRA manages, and then Hope Coalition has some, or Hope Coalition would be transitional though, right?
I think so.
And, I think they have both. I think they have some that are both.
And there is that study, and I can pull it up if we need to, that kind of goes through all of that.
I think there's 40% of the units over at Park Place too are considered. So.
Okay, we're going to kind of sneak along here and see if we need to come back on the detail. The second one, Michael, is kind of, you were talking about this just a couple minutes ago, about the pro and con of that. We're just on the first page, still on letter C. Create a plan for a small home or small lot development with amenities that include green space, transportation options, and walkability. This is the idea that, there's a little bit of discussion about the tiny homes or the small homes, and could the city kind of look at some flexibility in zoning. And I talked a little bit with the community development department here, and the idea is that, they might not want, it might not be the best idea to change zoning on all the lots that we already have, and make those because a lot of our space is already built. But some of the new, larger areas, we don't have a lot of them. But if you did have a development, one could be specifically for smaller homes and smaller lots. I don't know, Michael, if it would have to be tiny homes, but it could be, you know.
Be honest with you, as I said, read this, with the creative plan for small home lot development, amenities, include green space, transportation, and walkability and all that. I would be highly surprised if they would allow it in town. Because if there's walkability, I mean, you would have to put it close to downtown, and I'm telling you, NIMBY is going to come in effect with that one. Because I remember, or just recently, the old hospital, people were suggesting that, exactly what this is, suggesting that. Man, that neighborhood was like, nah, not in our backyard. Well, that'll be an interesting one to see come, if it's close to town and amenities for people to get to so they can get the services and all that stuff, so.
I know we talked to Ally's meeting on that last one that she had that, I mean, walkability is wonderful. And there's the other side to it of having outreach service, a space for outreach services where like the care clinic could come in a day a week, the food shelf could come in a day a week, you know, those kind of things so that if it's not, or people, you know, with disabilities or people with, you know, we have clients with, you know, agoraphobia, I mean, they're not going to walk downtown, but if those services came in, then if there's space for them to come in, you know, maybe like food shelf comes once a month down there or something like that.
Okay.
This was discussed at the school board meeting when it was about Jefferson. Exact same thing. It just got swept under the rug, pretty much. Because the care clinic, United Way, Soul Coalition, there's a couple of food shelf. They were all lined up, ready. You know what I mean? Like create situations for people to come with what Ms. Liz just explained. But NIMBY came in effect.
The nice thing about NIMBY is, like, I've run into this with the shelter, like, NIMBY can be there, the city council can say, too bad, we're bringing it anyway. I mean, they don't control it. You know, if the city council says, well, it approves it, the planning commission approves it, it goes. I mean, I faced horrible NIMBY at the shelter last year, and
I know, I was
they
there.
said, well, at the meetings last summer, you know.
The community meeting?
No, meetings last summer prior to moving in there. You know, we had probably 5 or 6 meetings on it. But they said you can, and we didn't have any problem once we moved in. You know, but then that's what I remember. I think it was Dean or Paul Rose who said it doesn't matter. He said we make the final call. He said they can't. You know, the neighborhood can't stop it if we say it's okay.
Well, and that's sort of what letter D underneath there is, to help combat the stigma of affordable and supportive housing in the community. And so underneath that, it talks about designating some city time, possibly funding to collaborate with community partners. Again, could be any of those organizations to provide a unified message to the public. And this group's talked specifically about that, you know, using data, but also showing stories. What's the myth versus reality?
I have 2 people who both have reached out to me and said that they would come and speak anytime because they had reservations in the neighborhood, and they said anytime they need, anytime we need support, they'll be more than happy to come.
Okay, great. Do people have thoughts on D? Does that seem to summarize what this group wanted? E was to possibly make changes to zoning rules and practices. One was flexibility in the number of parking stalls. Not all people need 2 parking stalls per unit. Some people don't need any. One was when the group was talking about that median income, and I think, I'm trying to think when that came up in one of the early meetings about, you know, we use Goodhue County's median income of $66,800 instead of Red Wing's median income, which is 54,000. So, you know, if you have to pay rent, they're actually using the higher. And so this group came in and said, well, how about if we look at that? And we've asked, and I do believe that this, and I'm going to triple check it before it goes before the council, but I've checked with a couple state agencies that say that we should be able to, you know, the council should be able to do that. I don't know if they will. These are just recommendations that go forward. And the other was to update language. This came from one conversation at this group, and I talked with the community development director, and, you know, we have some zoning language. It seems really outdated, like we use the word halfway house instead of like transitional supportive housing and things like that, just really language from, it seems a long time ago. So this is just saying to the council, hey, really our departments should go through their policies and see if their language is outdated.
Do you think Leah or Reagan or somebody from HRA would be able to tell us, like, are some of the funding sources that we would want for these, though, do they require the county median, or could we change, I mean, would we be eliminating funding sources if we don't use?
If it was a county partner, I'll check on that. To me, I thought that it was in the city where it's built, but
because a lot of grants specify which counties they will use, they will support.
Okay. Okay. That was all under the first one. That's all in an attempt. Those are all things that this group had been talking about, and just basically in a way to create more affordable and supportive housing. That was, you know, just get more units. Anyone want to say anything about this before we turn the page? Raise your hand if you are feeling like this is somewhat summarizing what we talked about. Raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand. But I want to see a show of hands or not. Show the way you're not. So what would you?
No, I wasn't here actually the last time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, I'm agreeing. Yeah, and I'm just putting in. I missed it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
Yeah. So no, I'm good.
Oh, yeah, because you've got November and
Yeah,
December.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Anyone here on this side? Alexis and Sam are good. I saw your hand. Okay. Two, I remember the sheet was right over there on that side of and I think Michael was at that sheet, I can't remember. But the group talked a lot about providing more education, you know, education and resources. Do you remember that? And and then we learned from Leah last month that Three Rivers does a lot of that, and we just don't promote it in Red Wing. And then she also said, hey, that Three Rivers could do a lot, you know, more in Red Wing. So the first one is really to work with partners to better provide and promote educational opportunities to landlords, tenants, and potential first-time home buyers. Even Alexis was talking about, you know, wanting to be a first-time home buyer, and Sam too, and what do you need to know to do that? So again, this isn't meant to be detailed, but this list of A through J were all the things that you guys listed on those big sheets. Financial literacy, you know, programs for home buyers assistance, rights and responsibilities. You can kind of read through there. Anti-discrimination information, like the Fair Housing Act. Classes for young adults who want to rent and then get points, you know, to help landlords nudge them. Training for landlords on de-escalation. There's one about eviction, mediation services and legal aid, all of that. There was housing assistance for undocumented residents, and a lot of our residents don't know that. So,
as a resource, could we add to have a centralized, maybe like on the city webpage or something, like a centralized area where landlords could list rentals, where prospective people looking to rent could go and look, and they could just kind of list, because, you know, I know there's a lot of places up above downtown and those kind of things, but it's just really hard to find the contact people for those. If there was like a central place that you could direct people to, you know, to go look for what's open you know, here's a studio, 1-bedroom, family, you know, this person takes vouchers, this person takes a subsidy, this person, you know, those type of things, because when people go looking, they might find it, and then they, you know, find out, like, they can't because they won't take a voucher or some type of certain subsidy. There's so many different kinds of subsidies.
Okay. And maybe it could be the HRA or someone takes that on, but the city, you know, shows it. It's on the city's.
When somebody gets a Bridges voucher, they just get a list of, like, they still have to go find their own unit with that Bridges voucher. And that's a very difficult task to do.
Yep, okay.
You know, to be able to know who takes those and who doesn't, and
Got it.
or who gets a, you know, Section 8 voucher, who doesn't need a Section 8 voucher because the whole unit is Section 8. You know, those things are,
Okay,
they get really confusing fast for people.
great. Okay. And again, part of the reason why this says, like, work with partners or convene partners is because the city doesn't technically have a housing department, they're going to sometimes have to nudge some of our partners to do it, but they can also use the power of local government to either bring them together or with the HRA to kind of encourage or make sure that we're talking about it and letting people know from a city perspective. The letter B was to convene partners. So this would be like the city actually inviting people, like the school district and youth outreach, to see how young people can learn more about renting and home ownership. One conversation that you guys had was, you know, the high school has this adulting class.
ILS.
Is that what it's called? What's it called?
Independent living skills.
Okay.
There's a couple of different ones.
There's
Yeah.
a new one, it's called adulting.
Yeah. But either way,
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak. I was trying to say that. My apologies.
yeah, no, I just sort of like, what are our kids learning, you know, and could they learn more and that kind of thing. So that's why that was there. And then I think Yaneth was the one who had the idea about letter C, write a regular city question and answer series on housing. Because there is so much and no one is really doing a Q&A kind of thing. So we could do that in Spanish and English and share it in the paper and on social media. Again, all under what are we doing to educate people so they know what they need to know. So what do you feel, and we would add, Liz, we can add that centralized place for people to find potential places and who takes vouchers and that kind of thing. Does this sort of summarize, or do you feel like these are good things to have into the education section? Okay. Okay.
Did we list Habitat for Humanity up there? Because they have a really good program for financial literacy that they have their families go through.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they're not listed there. Oh, good. Thank you. Yep, that's great. Okay. Okay. On page 3, these are a little bit, so one is decrease discrimination in local housing, and there are two under there. One, support local partners to bring in anti-discrimination education and best practices to share with landlords and real estate agents. The other was to increase education to community members on their rights through the Fair Housing Act, the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and others. So B is primarily using city staff time to promote that information. A is working with people. It could be anyone from, I know someone was mentioning the Chamber of Commerce, or, you know, information to share with the landlord industry and the real estate industry. We had some discussion on discrimination and, you know, the things that are happening. And so on one end, the people who are sometimes doing that discrimination, getting more education to them, and then letter B is talking about to the people who are going through it, they need to know more of their rights so that they can hopefully, if there are other ideas or other things here, happy to put those down.
Emphasis on it, it should be done. I just wanted to say, that A and B both are very important to me and every other person. I sell houses. I think some people know that every single day. And once in a while, I sell a house in Red Wing. Have I ever told you about the story they called the police on me while showing a home? So literacy. If I'm showing up there and I'm able to access the home and they have my clients, maybe I have permission to go in. So yeah, awareness needs to be there. Even people like us, they buy homes.
I agree. I got a friend that owns a painting company, and he had a couple of last year. He won't come to Red Wing no more. Let's just say that, because every time he's had 3 places he's painted here in town, and every single time he's had the cops called on him and his crew.
Yes. So we need to speak out about that, and they need to see people who are in housing like me, and like, okay, I can also get in your home because I have a license. And I can show people like me because they stigma, stigma. And this thing of a neighbor moves in the neighborhood and and you actually call the police on your neighbor is not good to either. It's just that education needs to be there. And I can't emphasize that because I moved here. And I was told that in my neighborhood, they watched it when I moved in. So this strong points for me. I think we need to create awareness in Red Wing that actually other people come to Red Wing and occupy homes, whether they own them or rent them, so that we don't end up in an accident because you are showing a house or you want to buy a home, So really, I don't know what to say about that. I'll write the book to the council if they want. But it gotta end somehow. We need to feel free. I need to feel free to take somebody to a home without feeling like I can't sell a home in Red Wing. I have to go to the cities every single day. This is home for me. And I would like to help anyone who would like to do that freely. Yes, thank you.
Anyone else on that one?
Could 3 add a C to it where you get some type funding for like a housing advocate for because you can provide the education that on the rates, but a lot of people are comfortable advocating for themselves when they run into issues for a variety of reasons. But if you had an advocate that could go with you to the landlord, or if you had a complaint to file with the city or something like that. And I don't know if that would be more under Maggie's new position or I don't know.
And it could be through a county or HRA, but that the city supports potentially.
I guess I would recommend it somebody who's not already associated, because when you have an issue with HRA and you work for HRA, if the advocate was somebody who was already with HRA, you're not going to be comfortable going to HRA and asking for an advocate. You know what I mean? I think needs to be an independent person who doesn't have a tie-in already to one of the programs in town. A county person would be neutral, a city person would be neutral, an independent person would be neutral, but I know when we go in and advocate with our residents at HRA, Jordan Towers, they wouldn't be comfortable asking an employee of HRA to advocate for them.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, so number 4 is to provide more housing assistance programs for undocumented residents and close language barriers. One was to support the HRA in researching and potentially implementing a new program for undocumented residents in 2022. There are some programs, we don't do very many. The other was to use the city resources to help housing partners close the language gap in promoting housing programs. We can do that better too on our website in a whole bunch of ways with translating language. The city, we don't do it very well now. We need to do better. So this gets at the whole idea of just really trying to, Yaneth was saying there are a lot of families she knows that maybe undocumented, but they don't know the resources. And then Leah came last time and said, well, we actually do have some programs, but it was like a disconnect like everything else. They didn't know that was happening. So it's not really creating totally new things, but it's hopefully getting some more of that communication. So we can talk more about that. And then 5 was the mobile home stuff, but I know people don't have a lot of energy, so I'm trying to go fast. Is there anything on 4 that people, I think part of it is, some of these aren't as detailed, but it's bringing up issues that maybe have not been talked about a lot before, and so raising that awareness that it needs to be prioritized and talked about, whether it's by the city or collaborations of people so that they get done. Does anyone have any thoughts on 4? Okay, moving on to 5. Ensure that Red Wing's mobile home neighborhoods are the best they can be. I don't know if that's the best way to say it. We talked a little bit about this last time, and Sam bringing up that idea of, the word safety kind of gives a wrong impression about what we were trying to say about mobile homes and more the structure, not the environment. So this kind of hopefully captures what was talked about last time. The first one was to reach out to mobile home residents, to just listen to what they want and what the opportunities are. Marvin was here last time, and I think Jonathan were talking about the mobile home parks, but it sounded like we need to reach out more just to listen to residents in those places to see what they want. We don't know. So this recommendation is not saying we should do this. It's more we need to really spend some time listening to people and hearing what they want in those neighborhoods. And then B was to research ways that local government can ensure the health and safety of the structures and the structures around them, like the roads and the parks. And then the third was to make sure that the mobile home management companies offer the contracts and any type of agreements in any language that that people request. So, any thoughts on that? Okay, and the last one is to decrease homelessness. This one at the time, the plan to increase housing stability and decrease homelessness was not done, but this says to work with partners so Red Wing will provide a stable, consistent emergency shelter system. B was to share the shelter information more often and in better ways so people know even right now, no matter what's available to them, they need to know what's available when they're in crisis. And then C was to work to find some storage solutions for people in transition so that people who own things but need to store things short term would have some kind of storage, in place while they find new housing. And I think that came up last time, Sam. Right? Does that summarize? I think that last one was from you, Sam, I think, or the storage solutions. Yeah. So we've walked through it a little bit. Now that you've seen and read through the whole thing, or maybe you've read it before, but you can let me know if there are some changes here. I think what I would do is to add some of the things that we've done and then send it out by Friday so this group could look at it again. And the idea is that if this group felt, okay with it, that you would maybe elect someone to present this to the council. Michael, do you want to share what you felt like how was that for you when you did it? You did it in person.
Empowering. Because I don't know what it is. It was good. So first I was scared, but once I got through it, it was, it's empowering, at least from my point of view.
So that beats somebody. So, and this would be virtual, I guess. The next council meeting is virtual. Does anyone want to nominate someone or is that too soon to do? If you don't feel like these would be ready, it seems like, you didn't have a lot of changes to these, so it'd be better to get them in front of council sooner than later. That's my only thought.
Should leave it to them. I think we should push it through. So that if
Yeah, 'cause they met on a Monday
they
night,
need
right?
that we can have time to work on it again.
Because they just met on a Monday night, so it's fresh in their minds.
Yeah, and they meet at the end of the month as a workshop as a council to really talk through things. So if they had your recommendations in front of them, so coming to the next meeting would be great timing for it.
So the 24th is virtual or live?
It's virtual.
Virtual.
As of the 24th, all boards and commission meetings are virtual.
Yep. So think about that. Maybe someone by the end of our meeting, and we might get out a little bit early. Think about who might want to do that. We have a little bit of time to talk about February and the rest of this group.
Could I add one thing to 6? One thing that we spoke about, and Allie's last group was to go along with the emergency shelter is the day program to complement it. And that was an action item that was added to, or that Allie's has in her proposal, is to have a year-round day program, not just like the emergency shelter is open, where people experiencing, it would be a community collaborative of the county and the city, private agencies, that type of thing. Again, different outreaches like food shelf, care plan, that kind of stuff, being able to come into the place, and then offer to anybody who needs any kind of assistance, like filling out housing applications. That could be where the rental person is located, who would have, like, they can maybe, keep up on a rental database, that type of thing. So people experiencing homelessness or any type of service like that could go in there and access that.
And that's, because there was so much that was covered in that homelessness with all those meetings. And I don't know how people feel here. So A kind of covers where it says, work with partners so we have a stable, consistent emergency shelter system, and start to follow the action steps in that plan. So I don't know, Liz, if if the group, I don't know if they're ready right now to list something entirely, you might entirely new, or if that's already in the plan, A kind of covers, like, follow unless you want to, so you're saying to add to this, open up a day center, right? Is that what you're wanting to add to this?
If you're talking about reducing homelessness, you're going to need something where people can go and get those supportive services and spend time following up with phone calls and that type of thing.
Sounds like a community center.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Is there someone right now who feels like they want to nominate someone to do presenting?
Liz seems to know much about it. Maybe she can do it.
What?
And you seem to know a lot about housing, so I don't know.
And it can also be I should add that too, because there's a lot here. So it could, if you feel strongly, you could do one person or two or whatever.
I would like to see, I would like to see Choloway do it just because her background in housing and dealing with the whole legal, knowing the ins and outs of the situation.
You both want to, do you want to team up and tag team?
Sure.
No? Okay. All right. So Liz and Choloway.
We just canceled my vacation.
Michael is passing the torch, so there we go.
I'm gonna do it anyways. I mean, it's just one of those situations where it's just, I like to see somebody else step up and do it,
Yeah.
on top of, I'm already speaking for other groups already, so no disrespect, I didn't want to do it.
Yep. Nope, that's awesome. Okay. Good. So let's just spend a couple of minutes. We won't go all the way till 8. We'll finish early for sure. But maybe we can just, you guys can have a little bit of a conversation about the next steps for this group. So this has been the first 18 months. We officially hit, this is meeting number 18. And there's lots that was covered and, lots that haven't. And so does this group, I don't have a specific facilitated thing to talk about this. I didn't know we were going to get done this early, but if we are, and our next meeting is virtual. So that brings in some things. And so with you all sitting here in this room, it'd be interesting to see how people feel if, should it be a time, one thing is it could be a time where we say, thank you for your service. We kind of said we would do this after 18 months. And everybody gets the chance to either decide to re-up or, step off 18 months. And we have some new people too who haven't, done 18 months. The group could say, we want to keep going just how we are for sure until the end of the year. And these are the topics that we want to cover, and we just keep rolling. The group could say, we're tired, we're done, and, we want to pass it on to other boards and commissions to do the work within those different areas. There's lots of different possibilities. I'm not asking you to come up with the solution today, but we got done a little early. So I just kind of, maybe everybody can start mulling this over in your head. So I'm just throwing those things out. Is there anybody who just has thoughts on that? This isn't really we're making a decision tonight, but just general thoughts.
Is it possible to get feedback from the council since we are kind of assisting? Is it possible to know what they think?
I do.
Helped, in any way?
Well, they think that it has been very helpful, I will say, from the people that I've talked to. Very helpful. And I think that they don't want to dictate what you all do. I think they want to hear from
Same
you.
as HRC.
Hmm?
Same as HRC. They feel the same way, like the whole situation. So, I'm including myself out of the situation because I'm on HRC, but we feel like the advisory council has been quite beneficial in helping us progress on creating the right avenues for the community.
I think if we just propose all of these, which are all really good and are all subject areas that have been hot buttons in Red Wing for years, that a group that's gonna help, whichever ones they're gonna take on, help bring those to fruition. Because who will then, the city councils, they're not gonna be landlords, they're not gonna, they're gonna move on, they're gonna say, yeah, when we give you some funding and that, but they're not going to take on these things as action items themselves either.
But true, and other community groups, but I don't think they expect this advisory team to do it. You know what I mean? The policies come from the advisory team, and then it's up to the community and, and if you list, so yes, definitely the HRA, Habitat for housing, or the community development and developers for planning or something. But I guess it could be monitoring, but I just want to make sure the group knows that this group doesn't have to actually implement.
I understand that, but the things that we proposed before and stuff, just to make sure that these things keep moving forward, that they say, yes, whatever ones are going to take on as action items, who's going to make sure that, I'm not saying that, no, we're not going to go out and find the funding in that, but who's going to make sure that those things are keeping going forward or are our vision?
So then that would go to council, and then council would say, okay, HRA, because that is a board that they have influence over. They would say, okay, I'm just teasing this out a little bit. What you could do is say, for certain things that have a human rights bent, housing discrimination or something, okay, maybe that sits with the HRC, and some things sit with the HRA, and some of this planning for housing, that sits with the planning department or the Port Authority or something like that. So I think the council would sort of give the different boards and commissions that work. It's a good question. And there has to be follow through. I'm going to put a couple of these things down, what we're talking about. One is follow through. Some of the things, and I will mention with follow through, the other recommendations that you all made have now been put into the racial equity plan, and that's being passed to different boards and commissions and staff members and departments. And then there's sort of this whole spreadsheet that's created to sort of say, when are things happening? Let's give a very small, specific, concrete example of the toy boxes in the parks. And there was one done, for Night to Unite.
Yep.
But there are 6 more that need to be created.
Yep.
So now over the winter,
People are looking forward to it as well, too.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people reach out to me about that.
good. So our public works people are building those over the winter. So that one step went from a recommendation, but then this group might be thinking, well, did anything really get done? Yep, because now that's gone on to their work plan for the winter so that in the spring, those will be ready. So that's just an example of how the different recommendations have gone to be implemented. And these housing is a little different. We don't really have a housing department, but we do have influence over, the city council has influence over different things. So follow through is one thing. Another, Joel, what did you say when we started talking about this? You said,
Oh, I was looking for feedback. Oh, are you talking about that?
yeah, but when you said something when I said, let's just open it up for discussion about the future of the advisory team.
Yeah. Well, I thought, we can, I feel like if you're working on something, you gotta know which way whether you're doing okay or not.
Oh,
What's the purpose if we're not making an impact? If we are, I think everybody's gonna feel happy to maybe continue. I don't know. Just wanting to know whether we've been
I do
getting
think
help.
I do think the council, and like I said too, the HRC, apparently the council feels like it has been definitely impactful.
Could one of our recommendations be that we have a housing department? Because I know, there was a little talk of adding a person or two to when Maggie came in. If we had a housing department, that this stuff could all go under that person.
It could.
mean, that would centralize a lot of Red Wings housing issues if there was a department that oversaw building and discrimination and, I mean, if there was a central point person.
Think about that, and we should talk about that. Okay. What does this side of the group feel like, just in terms of just things that are coming like to the top of your mind about what you see as the future? And Rachel?
I was wondering, in the case that we continue as a team, I joined in September at the start of the housing. What topics did you guys work on?
So we started with public safety and policing, which we were going to come back to because we didn't get as far as we wanted.
There you go. There. February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go back to
I
that.
think, yes.
Because now I think, I'm sorry, I want Rachel to finish.
Go on
Oh,
that.
yeah. So it was policing, and then it was sort of like engagement with the community, development, raising up diverse leaders, and strengthening neighborhoods. So there were some longer term, there's some short term and long term things like neighborhood champion program and neighborhood grant program for 2023 and 24 and things like that.
So going forward.
And that's on the website too, so you can look at all of those recommendations. And
Okay. So going forward, would there be like an opportunity to suggest topics? I know apparently policing is pretty hot, so we should get back to that one. But
this group brought up hiring too, so like HR hiring stuff. But you're saying, we were going to talk about things that you, so the group still has an interest in this?
Lisa, I can't speak for nobody else. I apologize, you guys.
I don't think we ever even
We haven't
received
even
a
edited.
solid answer on why we stopped.
Yeah.
Oh,
We know why.
it was a boy.
Right. I know.
I'm sorry.
Any other topics that this group would like to go into? We had some at the end. Yep.
I would just like to maybe see something done about like, I know this kind of bleeds into other topics too, but the drug epidemic in the
Yeah.
community and how, I don't know, I feel like it's so prevalent and stuff.
Well, yeah, on that, like the opioid money we're going to get, like how the city uses it.
Yeah.
We could give recommendations on like how that money should be spent.
Right.
I have no idea how much it is, but I know they were looking for recommendations on that.
Any others? Do you think that we should sort of have like a thanks for your service? Are you willing to, and sort of like asking people, because sometimes it's nice to say, do you want to continue or do you want to stop? And to give people an option.
Simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Will we be filling any voids then if people do choose to not continue come February?
Say that again, Sam.
Will we be filling like any voids, like if people do choose to leave, like any?
Yeah, we have. I think we'd have to, and then we'll have to figure that out.
We don't
because-
have any.
Right. We used our three sort of alternates that were originally chosen, and so we have a group of people, but that was a year and a half ago. People may or may not, or there might be new people who, we could go back to the original group of people who in July and August of 2020 applied. I don't know but we could come up with some way of selecting. And is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
So that we would still have, Because if people just drop off and we don't put on there and then people can't come, we might end up with 2 or 3 people, you know, in a meeting or something, so.
Give it a pause. Oh, sorry.
Will there be any pushback that there's not a clean slate coming in February? And, because I thought it was kind of talked about, like, we would sunset and a new group would come in. Is that not?
I think, well, my charge was to ask the group what they thought.
Okay.
You know, what the group, because it was sort of based on the idea that it would go for a portion of time, but it wasn't really. Sometimes it said 18 months, but it also said, you know, this is until it's done.
With
You
the
know.
option to continue
Yeah.
on.
Did we ever find out where, because we talked about some of these things needed funding that we wanted. Did we ever find out where Dominic's fee, where that went back into the, just go to the general fund because she didn't get a large portion of her fee? Like, do we have that?
I can find that out because there are recommendations that have a certain
Yeah.
funding amount. And that money is going to those things. So like an African American celebration on history and culture.
Right.
The council put $10,000 toward that. There's $10,000 in a column specifically for that item. And so there will be, that this group can see, sort of a spreadsheet of all the different recommendations and then some of the money, you know, different monies that went to that.
And is that separate from Dominic's fee that was
Yeah,
not
that was-
spent, or?
I can find out where that money went. My guess is, I don't know, when consultants don't use money or, you know, things go back into a general fund, but I honestly don't know. Mhm. But the council also put money toward recommendations that it didn't have money before, so, I mean, you could, I don't know if there's a direct line from that to that, but there's money that's been put into racial equity initiatives that wasn't there last year.
I've just seen comments where, you know, people have asked just on social media, like, what happened to that?
Yeah.
Because it was a very public, talked about fee and, you know, that was out front, obviously, which needs to be and what we were being paid and those type of things. So
Yeah.
I think to have some answer to that, if people start asking, that we have a unified response of, you know, what happened to that original funding. And
I'm guessing we're back into the general, but I'm not sure. Okay. So is the group feeling as a whole like it wants the advisory team to continue? And just checking.
I think as long as we've got projects or, what do I want to use, not projects, but,
Topics or?
yeah, topics, you know, that it's a good thing. And personally, I think it would be tough with all of us left. And so you were able to get another 15 people for them to come in and kind of start from scratch, you know, but.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like if we have, the topics, then, and I feel like the feedback is also a good thing because we could feel like we're not doing anything and it's actually helping, or we could feel like we're doing something and it's not helping. So, you know.
So it would be helpful for you guys to hear directly from the council about feedback on. Is that what you're saying, Alexis?
Yeah,
Yeah.
would be
Hey, what do we
nice.
do? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
Good. Good point. Mm-hmm.
And one thing I was thinking too on our, like the policy and procedure, I think it would be beneficial to look at the, like fire department too, because they're dealing with a lot of these, especially with drug overdose cases. It's the, you know, the medics and stuff that are kind of interacting on a lot of these same touch points, so that it would, I don't know, it just might be nice to at least do kind of a quick look through that and see if there are ways that we can improve, or if they have a bilingual, you know, I mean, just some of the things we talked about with the police department, it probably would make a lot of sense there too.
I think it'd be interesting to look at how other communities are working through some of those issues too, so we, you know, we're not trying to recreate the wheel of some community that is successful. And, you know, like Winona partnered with mental health providers, you know, to go with their police, a mental health provider to go out and police calls and that kind of stuff. When they felt it was that, you know, some of those things are, okay.
So one subject matter that you brought up before, but I want to find out if it's of interest to you, is the hiring process, hiring and retention process. How are people, I mean, some things are just legal, but that was brought up before, but if it's not of interest, we don't have to do that. You don't have to do a question.
I think just to make sure it's very intentional, that it's not biased. You know, I know the school really looked at that. You know, like what are they doing? You know, one quote was, "The best dressed isn't the best qualified." You know, live experiences outlive, you know, outweigh certain education and backgrounds and that type of thing. So, you know, are they just when hiring, the best dressed, the best spoken might not be the best candidate for the job.
Is it something this group wants to do, or is it or not really? Because you don't have to, it's totally up.
Are you talking like
City? Yeah.
Okay.
With the idea of trying to get more diverse.
What is that? I thought we kind of talk about a little bit of thinking about something else. I think actually it should be intentional. They should hire somebody different.
Yeah.
And, you know, practice makes perfect. It's not just gonna, it doesn't just, you know,
But that takes a very specific training to get out of the mindset of who you're looking for. When you're looking for the ideal candidate, then you need to get out of the mindset of the norm, and that takes training. That's forming new pathways when you're doing that.
Yeah.
You know. I had a lot of conversation with her about that.
Yeah.
A lot.
Okay. Knowing that you would have a virtual meeting in February, do you want to do that, or do you want to take a break and see if it goes back to in-person in March?
So did we decide which topic we're going to work on, or should we have 2-3 days to think through and we all email?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, we haven't, I mean, there's no decision. This topic was just, you know, we were going to take February to just talk about it, but now we've had time and it sounds kind of like the group wants to continue, but we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We started with 12. We had 3 people leave, then we had 3 come on, and Thomas has now stepped off, so we're to 11. So if we wanted to go up to 12, even if every single person stayed on, we'd still probably be adding somebody. And my guess is that there are going to be a couple people, or whoever, who just is given their time and, you know, like, can't keep going.
Maybe since we're presenting to the city council, it's a good thing to meet in February so we can know what their decisions were from their workshop. And, you know, because if we wait until March, that's, you know, 6-7 weeks after the workshop. We might not be as fresh with their, you know, ideas, and then use that as kind of a recap on these, what comes out of their workshop, and then a planning, you know, strategy planning time for going forward.
That sounds good.
That's what I was gonna say, because you ladies go present that, and then they have their little powwow afterwards, that is fresh in their minds and what, hopefully they had some feedback and stuff on it to go over that.
So last time, and I don't know if people felt like that was beneficial, we were in that smaller room and we played the video that Michael, so it showed him presenting and then it showed the conversation with the council after, so everybody could see it. And some people came and supported, like Cholaway, you were there, and there was somebody else. Who else?
It was just Cholaway and
Oh,
Thomas.
That's right, Thomas. For those of you who maybe remember that, was that beneficial to actually kind of watch that and listen to the council? Or do you just want to kind of regroup? You sure you guys want to keep meeting? I'm trying here.
I mean, I think if we have the fresh version of what we're gonna present, I think it's, I don't know, we need to watch it again.
Yeah, okay. We could just recap, and you guys could kind of present like how it went and how you felt and, that kind of stuff. Okay. So February, we would meet virtually. And we'll review the housing. And we will find out, and maybe the council at that time, we can say that, the council can give some feedback, perhaps at that meeting, for the work that you all have done. If anyone does want to come and support Cholaway and Liz as they present to the council, that is a week from Monday. I'll send a reminder, but it's January 24th at 6 o'clock.
It's virtual, right?
Oh, it is virtual. Okay. Yes.
So you're gonna come to my house?
I keep forgetting. But you could click on it if you wanted to. Okay, so February we're going to meet. Everybody think this next couple weeks, if you want to stay on or step off. Sounds like the group wants to continue. Right now it looks like policing, the police department, the fire department, maybe one or two unintentional hiring, different ways of looking at that, what the priority things are in hiring.
If we do policing, are we gonna have somebody from the police department on it again?
Yeah. Are we ready to do it? Is the other side ready or?
I will ask.
Just checking.
Well, it would be nice even if they would, I don't know how, Chief Beals or Corey Ebery, but if they could just kind of look at the things we were actively talking about, like has there been any changes in any of those areas that he took over?
That was incomplete, I thought. It was incomplete, so I'm thinking, I don't want to just fill out before we see how that's going to go. I think everybody said that was the number one topic we needed to see, to start on. And then we had to.
And I'm wondering if we could, I wish I knew how long we're going to be virtual, because it'd be great to do the policing in person.
In person, yeah.
Michael?
What day are you thinking to do it in February?
Second Wednesday of the month.
Would that be before this? Yeah, that's never mind. Because I was going to say I could talk to Chief Rohr. I got invited to their department meeting on the 22nd and 23rd.
Of January.
February.
Oh,
To
okay.
talk about some stuff and
Okay.
but
Good.
yeah, it wouldn't work.
Oh.
But I can still reach out to them and ask them.
Yeah, because I don't think we wouldn't be talking about policing in February. We're going to kind of put a cap on housing and how did that go? How do people feel about, with policing, would people rather, we're not going to be virtual for a year. I don't think we are. I'm seeing it as short term, but I don't know. Who knows?
So
Like
you
Alexis
suggest
said, who
maybe
knows?
we look at the other things we're supposed to talk about and get a shorter, maybe an easier topic we can do while we're on virtual so that we can do policing in person.
Mhm. And then the weather would be nicer.
Warmer all.
Right,
Maybe
so
we can figure it out sooner rather than later.
Oh. Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Well, I will find out. I will find out some more. I'll find out some more. keep February, keep the second Wednesday in February in your schedules. We'll all be at home, but if you can attend, that would be great. I will give some feedback that the group feels like it should continue. And I will send an email out so that you can all decide, and you just send me back. Yes, I want to keep on. No, thank you, but, you know, this is working. Okay? Anything else anybody's got in the last 5 minutes? 2 minutes?
2 weeks.
Anything? Boom, 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 boom.
Huh?
Are we good?
Good to see everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.